They laughed when he married a black woman with 5 kids, whispering behind his back and predicting his downfall. But years later, the very people who mocked him now envy his life. What happened to turn their scorn into admiration? How did a family they dismissed as chaos become an unstoppable force of love, creativity, and success? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the countryside chapel, casting rainbow-colored light across the wooden pews. Ben Calloway stood at the altar, fidgeting with his bow tie, his usually confident demeanor replaced by nervous excitement. The chapel's rustic charm was enhanced by wildflowers draped along every pew and gathered in mason jars that lined the aisle. The wooden doors creaked open, and 5 identical little girls in flowing dresses stepped forward. Each dress had subtle touches that made them unique. Ava's had paintbrushes embroidered on the sash. Sophia's featured tiny microscopes. Lila's sparkled with sequins. Nina's was adorned with delicate flower patterns. And Maya's had a professional-looking ribbon that mimicked a business suit's lapel. The girls scattered rose petals with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Maya took charge, making sure her sisters stayed in formation. Lila couldn't help but toss petals at her sisters, giggling as she did so. Sophia studied the way the petals fell, while Nina carefully placed each one as if planting seeds. Ava moved quietly, creating artistic patterns with her petals. When Alicia appeared in the doorway, Ben's breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to glow in the afternoon light, her dark hair crowned with a wreath of wildflowers. Her warm brown eyes met his, and suddenly the whispers from his family seemed to fade away. In the front pews, Ben's mother clutched her designer handbag tightly, her lips pressed into a thin line. His father, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit, shook his head slightly. Several rows back, Ben's business partners from his tech company whispered among themselves, their disapproving glances darting between the boisterous quintuplets and their soon-to-be boss's new wife. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the outdoor reception area. Strings of twinkling lights hung between old oak trees, and rustic wooden tables dotted the lawn. The quintuplets darted between the tables, their laughter echoing across the gathering. "Benjamin!" His mother's voice cut through the festivities as she approached him, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. "Marrying a woman with 5 children? Are you sure about this?" Her voice dripped with concern that barely masked her disapproval. Before Ben could respond, his father joined them. "This isn't the path we envisioned for you, son. Running a successful company requires focus. A ready-made family of 6 is quite a distraction." Across the lawn, Ben could see his business associates huddled together, their expressions serious as they watched Lila chase her sisters around a table, telling jokes that made the other girls giggle uncontrollably. Later that evening, Ben carried his bags into Alicia's cozy 2-story home. The moment he stepped through the door, Maya took charge. "Welcome to the Johnson household, Mr. Ben," she announced formally, clipboard in hand. "We've prepared a comprehensive tour of the facilities." "I made a schedule," Maya added, showing him a carefully drawn chart with different colored blocks. Ava hung back slightly but smiled shyly as they reached her corner of the living room. "These are my drawings," she whispered, showing him sketches of their family, including a new figure that looked remarkably like him. "And this is my laboratory," Sophia declared proudly when they reached the kitchen table, where a collection of jars contained what appeared to be growing crystals. "I'm studying molecular structure through crystallization." Lila bounced around them, performing impromptu comedy routines. "Why did the cookie go to the doctor?" she asked, barely containing her laughter. "Because it was feeling crumbly." Nina guided him to the windowsills where various plants thrived in colorful pots. "This is my garden family," she explained softly. "Each plant has its own personality, just like us." Ben stood in the middle of the chaos, watching as 5 unique personalities swirled around him, each girl eager to share their world with him. Despite the weight of his family's disapproval and his associates' doubts, he felt something he'd never experienced before, the warmth of belonging. The first rays of sunlight had barely crept over the horizon when a thunderous clanging echoed through the Johnson household. Ben Calloway shot up in bed, his heart racing, only to hear Lila's gleeful giggles accompanying what sounded like an enthusiastic percussion performance with kitchen cookware. "Rise and shine, everybody," Lila shouted, banging a wooden spoon against a pot. "It's morning concert time." Ben stumbled down the stairs, his hair sticking up in every direction, to find the kitchen already in full chaos mode. Sophia stood at the counter, her safety goggles firmly in place as she dropped various ingredients into a blender. "I'm calculating the perfect ratio of proteins to vitamins," she explained seriously, adding what appeared to be a handful of spinach to a mixture that had turned an alarming shade of brown. "This is attempt number 3. Across the room, Ava was frantically pulling open drawers and looking under chairs. "Has anyone seen my sketchbook?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling with worry. "I was working on something really important." Nina weaved between her sisters, carefully adjusting the positions of various potted plants that seemed to have multiplied overnight. "The morning sun is perfect for the succulents," she murmured, moving a small cactus to the windowsill. "But the ferns need indirect light." Maya stood in the middle of the kitchen, clipboard in hand, trying to restore order to the morning chaos. "Sophia, the smoothie experiment needs to wrap up in exactly 3 minutes. Lila, please put the pots back where you found them. Ava, check under the coffee table. Nina, the plants can wait until after breakfast." Ben, still trying to process the morning's energy, decided to take initiative. "How about I make everyone pancakes?" he offered, reaching for a mixing bowl. The suggestion was met with enthusiastic cheers, but things quickly went sideways. The flour bag split when he picked it up, creating a white cloud that covered half the kitchen. When he tried to crack an egg, pieces of shell fell into the batter. The electric mixer sprayed drops of pancake mix across the counter and onto his face. "Houston, we have a problem," Lila announced, dissolving into laughter at the sight of Ben's flour-covered expression. "Our new chef might need some backup." Even Maya cracked a smile as she helped wipe up the spilled milk. Sophia immediately began explaining the chemical reaction between baking powder and buttermilk, while Ava sketched the amusing scene in her recently discovered sketchbook. It had been under the sofa all along. Before they knew it, the clock showed 7:45 a.m., and panic erupted. "School starts in 30 minutes, Maya announced, switching into high-gear organizing mode. "Emergency protocol activated." The next 15 minutes were a blur of activity. Nina couldn't find her left shoe, Sophia almost forgot her science project, and Lila was still trying to perfect her latest joke for show and tell. Ava realized her art supplies were scattered between 3 different rooms, while Maya attempted to zip up everyone's backpacks, while simultaneously making sure lunches were packed. Ben found himself caught in the whirlwind, helping where he could despite still wearing his pajama pants and, he now noticed, 2 completely different socks, one blue and one striped. He grabbed keys, helped tie shoelaces, and somehow managed to get everyone into the car. They pulled up to the school entrance with minutes to spare. The girls tumbled out of the car, each heading off in their own unique way. Maya marching purposefully, Sophia lost in thought about her project, Lila skipping and practicing her jokes, Nina stopping to admire the school's garden, and Ava clutching her sketchbook close as she walked. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows of Le Petit Jardin, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Ben sat stiffly in his chair, surrounded by his family members who had gathered for what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner. Instead, the atmosphere felt more like an intervention. "Really, Benjamin," his mother said, delicately dabbing her lips with a silk napkin. "I simply don't understand the rush into all this responsibility. 5 children? At once?" She emphasized the word 5 as if it were particularly distasteful. Ben's sister Caroline leaned forward, her expensive jewelry catching the light. "It's not just about the number, though that's concerning enough. These girls have their own history, their own way of doing things. You're basically stepping into chaos." "And what about the business?" his father interjected, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disapproval. "The Asian market expansion needs your full attention. How can you possibly focus on growing the company while juggling 5 stepdaughters?" Ben set down his fork, taking a deep breath before responding. "I appreciate your concern," he said carefully, "but Alicia and the girls are my family now. They're not a distraction or a burden. They're the best thing that's ever happened to me." His mother's face tightened, Darling, we're not saying they're bad people. We just think you haven't thought this through properly. There are plenty of lovely single women without such complicated situations. Across town, in a cozy cafe with mismatched chairs and local artwork on the walls, Alicia sat with her 3 closest friends, their conversation following a similarly challenging path. "We're just worried, honey," Sarah said, stirring her coffee absently. "I mean, he's used to board meetings and business trips, not science projects and ballet recitals." Jenny nodded in agreement. "And let's be honest, his family runs in completely different circles. Are you sure he understands what he's getting into? The girls are, well, they're a handful. In the best possible way, of course, but still." "And what happens when the novelty wears off?" Maria added gently. "When he realizes that being a stepfather to quintuplets isn't just about fun weekend activities and bedtime stories?" Alicia smiled, her fingers wrapped around her warm mug. "Ben has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met," she said firmly. "Yes, our worlds are different, but that's what makes us work. He sees the girls for who they are, not as a package deal or a burden, but as 5 unique, wonderful individuals." Later that evening, Ben and Alicia sat together on their back porch, sharing the day's events. The girls' laughter drifted through the open window as they played upstairs. "So," Alicia said with a slight smile, "your family thinks I'm complicating your life?" Ben chuckled softly. "And your friends think I'm in over my head?" "Something like that," she replied, leaning against his shoulder. "Let them talk," Ben said, taking her hand in his. "They don't understand what we have here. This family, you and the girls, you're everything I never knew I needed." Alicia squeezed his hand. "Together?" "Together," Ben affirmed, pulling her closer. "We can handle anything they throw at us." One crisp afternoon, Ben stood in the doorway of the garage, a box of old papers in his hands, when he noticed a small figure huddled in the corner. Ava sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, her paintbrush moving in gentle strokes across a large canvas. Sunlight filtered through the dusty window, casting a warm glow on her artwork, a vibrant scene of butterflies dancing through a field of wildflowers. "That's beautiful," Ben said softly, not wanting to startle her. Ava's brush paused mid-stroke. She glanced up at him shyly, her cheeks flushing pink. "Thank you," she whispered, ducking her head. "The way you've captured the light on the wings, it's really something special," Ben continued, setting down the box and moving closer. "Where did you learn to paint like that?" Ava's shoulders relaxed slightly. I watch lots of tutorials online," she explained, her voice growing stronger. "And sometimes I just imagine things and try to make them real on the canvas." Ben knelt beside her, studying the details of her work. "You know, there's this amazing art supply store downtown. They have these special brushes that professional artists use. Would you like to check it out sometime?" The transformation in Ava's expression was immediate. Her eyes widened with excitement, and a genuine smile spread across her face. "Really? You'd take me there?" In the kitchen later that afternoon, Ben found Sophia surrounded by what looked like the remains of several electronic devices. Her tongue stuck out slightly as she concentrated on connecting 2 wires together. "Come on, work this time," she muttered, adjusting a small motor. "Need a hand?" Ben offered, pulling up a chair beside her. Sophia pushed her glasses up her nose. "It's supposed to move forward when I press this button, but something's not right." Ben examined the makeshift robot. May I?" He pointed to a loose connection. Together, they traced the circuit, making small adjustments until suddenly, the robot whirred to life, rolling across the kitchen table. "We did it!" Sophia squealed, jumping up and down. "Ben, look, it's actually working." Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Do you think we could build a bigger one? Maybe with sensors and everything?" "Absolutely," Ben grinned. "I'd love to help." That evening, Maya marched into the living room with purpose, carrying a stack of board games. "Family game night," she announced. "Everyone needs to participate, no exceptions." Soon the whole family gathered around the coffee table. Lila had everyone in stitches with her spot-on impressions of their teachers, while Nina proudly introduced her new nature trivia game, complete with facts about local plants and animals that she'd researched herself. "Did you know that monarch butterflies can travel up to 3,000 miles during migration?" Nina asked excitedly, arranging her game pieces. "Just like how far Dad had to drive when he got lost taking us to the park last week," Lila quipped, causing everyone to burst into laughter. From her spot on the couch, Alicia watched as Ben helped Maya keep score, encouraged Nina's nature facts, laughed at Lila's jokes, and celebrated when Sophia won a round. Her heart swelled as she observed how naturally he fit into their family dynamic, how each girl was beginning to shine in her own way around him. Ben caught her eye across the room and smiled, his expression full of contentment and joy. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and love, their blended family felt more real and more right than ever before. That evening, the grand ballroom of the Riverside Plaza Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the shimmer of evening gowns. Ben adjusted his bow tie nervously as he and Alicia stepped through the ornate double doors. She looked stunning in a deep blue evening dress that seemed to catch every light in the room. "You look beautiful," Ben whispered, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "And you clean up pretty well yourself," Alicia replied with a warm smile. "Ready to charm your business associates?" They made their way through the crowd of Silicon Valley's elite, stopping to chat with various entrepreneurs and investors. Ben couldn't help but notice how naturally Alicia handled these interactions. She spoke eloquently about community development and educational initiatives, drawing interested nods from even the most hardened executives. "Your wife is remarkable," commented Sandra Chen, a prominent tech journalist. "The way she's implementing those after-school programs, brilliant." Ben beamed with pride. "She's amazing. The programs she's developed have already helped hundreds of families." As the evening progressed, Alicia excused herself to speak with Janet Martinez, a community leader she'd been hoping to connect with about expanding her youth mentorship program. Ben watched her go, still amazed at how she could light up any room she entered. His moment of pride was interrupted by loud laughter from nearby. Ben turned to see Richard Thompson, his company's biggest investor, surrounded by a group of associates near the bar. Richard's voice carried clearly across the space between them. "Have you heard about Ben's latest venture?" Richard's words were thick with mockery. "Forget tech innovation. He's running a daycare circus now. 5 kids. Can you imagine?" The group chuckled and Richard continued, his voice getting louder. "How does he expect to lead a cutting-edge startup when he's probably too busy braiding hair and making school lunches?" Ben felt heat rise in his chest. The room seemed to narrow to just this moment, just these words that struck at his heart. Without hesitation, he strode toward the group. "Is there something funny about being a father, Richard?" Ben's voice was steady, but firm. The group fell silent and Richard turned, his smirk faltering slightly. "Ben, we were just discussing your unique situation." "You mean my family?" Ben stepped closer, aware that nearby conversations had stopped as people turned to watch. "The same family that inspired our new educational software platform? The one that's already getting attention from school districts across the country?" Richard's smile turned cold. "Come now, Ben, we both know this little domestic experiment of yours is going to impact your focus. The company needs innovation." Ben cut him off, his voice rising with conviction. "And my family, yes, all 5 of my daughters and my incredible wife. They show me new perspectives every single day. They're not a distraction, Richard. They're my inspiration." The ballroom had grown quiet. Ben could see Alicia watching from across the room, concern and pride mingling in her expression. Richard straightened his jacket, his face hardening. "Well then, we'll see how far inspiration gets you without our investment backing." "Are you threatening to pull your funding because I chose to have a family?" Ben asked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I'm making a business decision," Richard replied coldly. "One that should have been made the moment you decided to play house instead of focusing on what really matters." The next morning, the email arrived as Ben had expected. Richard Thompson's investment firm was formally withdrawing all funding from the startup, effective immediately. The legal language was cold and precise, but the message was clear. Ben's defense of his family had cost him dearly. The morning sun cast long shadows through Ben's office windows as he sat at the conference table, surrounded by concerned faces. The quarterly financial reports lay scattered before them, each page telling a grimmer story than the last. "Without Thompson's backing, we're looking at a serious cash flow problem," Sarah Martinez, the chief financial officer, explained. Her usually confident voice wavered slightly. "We've got enough runway for maybe 2 months, but after that..." Ben rubbed his temples, trying to focus on the numbers swimming before him. The bank representatives exchanged glances, their expressions stern and unyielding. "Mr. Calloway," began Mr. Peters from First National, "without substantial new investment, we'll have to reassess our lending position." His words hung heavy in the air. Mark Chen, Ben's longtime business partner, cleared his throat. "We might have to consider layoffs, Ben. Maybe even shutting down if we don't find new funding soon." The weight of responsibility pressed down on Ben's shoulders as he thought of his employees, their families, their mortgages, their children's college funds. He'd built this company from nothing, and now it was crumbling because he'd stood up for his family. That evening, Ben walked through his front door, his mind still trapped in a maze of financial scenarios. The usual chaos of the household seemed muted, distant. He barely registered Lila's attempt at a new knock-knock joke as he passed the kitchen. Maya approached him with a sheet of paper covered in her careful handwriting. "Dad, I made some calculations about our grocery budget. If we switch to generic brands..." "Not now, please," Ben snapped, his voice sharper than intended. The hurt in Maya's eyes made him instantly regret his outburst, but before he could apologize, she had already retreated. Lila's usual smile faltered as she watched her sister leave. Even Sophia looked up from her latest experiment, concern evident on her face. Nina quietly gathered her gardening tools and slipped outside, while Ava hunched further over her sketchbook, her pencil movements becoming more hesitant. Alicia appeared in the doorway of his home office where he'd secluded himself. Her eyes held understanding and concern. "Want to talk about it?" "I just need time to think," Ben replied, turning away from her outstretched hand. The guilt of pushing away his family mixed with the anxiety churning in his stomach. Later that evening, the house grew unusually quiet. Ben noticed movement in the hallway, the girls whispering among themselves, darting between rooms with purpose. Despite his preoccupation, their determination caught his attention. Ava set up her easel in the corner of the living room, her brush moving with careful precision across a fresh canvas. Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop balanced on her knees as she typed rapidly. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the backyard as Ben sat on the weathered back porch steps, his business troubles momentarily forgotten. He watched the quintuplets playing in their own distinct ways, Ava sketching in her notebook, Sophia examining insects with a magnifying glass, Lila performing an impromptu comedy routine for her sisters, Nina tending to her small herb garden, and Maya organizing everyone into what looked like a complex game of her own design. Something stirred in Ben's heart as he observed their natural creativity and enthusiasm. Alicia joined him on the steps, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Look at them," Ben said softly, his eyes brightening with sudden inspiration. "They each have such unique gifts. What if..." He turned to face Alicia, excitement building in his voice. "What if we turn the backyard into a space where creativity thrives, a place for all of us to build and grow together?" Alicia's face lit up with understanding. "I think that's exactly what we need." That weekend, the family gathered in the backyard, armed with supplies from the local hardware store. Wooden planks leaned against the fence, paint cans stood ready, and tools were organized neatly on a folding table. The girls buzzed with excitement as Ben unrolled a large sheet of paper. "First, we need a plan," he announced. Ava immediately stepped forward, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. "I have some ideas," she said quietly, opening to a fresh page. Her pencil moved swiftly as she drew an elaborate layout of the space, complete with dedicated areas for each family member's interests. Sophia, meanwhile, was already tinkering with some spare parts she'd found. "I can make a pulley system to move heavy stuff," she declared, demonstrating with a makeshift contraption, "and maybe a solar-powered fan for hot days." "We definitely need a stage," Lila chimed in, striking a dramatic pose. How else will I premiere my new comedy special, My Life as a Quintuplet? Her sisters groaned good-naturedly at the familiar jokes. Nina walked the perimeter of the yard, making notes. We can plant climbing vines here, she suggested, pointing to the fence, and maybe a small vegetable garden in that sunny corner. Maya pulled out her notebook, already creating lists. We'll need to establish a schedule for using shared spaces, she announced, and safety protocols and cleanup procedures. As the family worked together, the backyard began its transformation. Ben and Alicia helped the girls saw wood for raised garden beds, while Sophia's pulley system proved invaluable for moving materials. Ava's design guided their efforts, with Maya keeping everyone on task and on schedule. By Sunday afternoon, the space had taken shape. A colorful mural was beginning to spread across one wall, courtesy of Ava's artistic vision. Sophia's workstation occupied one corner, complete with a recycled desk and storage for her inventions. Lila's small stage stood ready for performances, while Nina's carefully planned garden beds lined the edges of the yard. Maya had posted laminated schedules and rules, color-coded for easy reference. Ben stood in the center of their creation, watching his family add their personal touches to the space. Alicia squeezed his hand, both of them taking in the scene before them. The backyard had become more than just an idea factory. It was a physical representation of their family's spirit, where each person's unique talents contributed to something greater than themselves. The following week, the backyard idea factory hummed with activity as Ava stood before her half-finished mural, carefully adding strokes of vibrant blue to the sky. The painting had grown beyond her initial vision, spreading across the entire wall in a symphony of colors that depicted children of all backgrounds playing, creating, and learning together. Mrs. Peterson from next door peeked over the fence, her eyes widening at the sight. "Oh my, Ava, that's absolutely beautiful." Ava ducked her head shyly, but Ben noticed the small smile playing at her lips. He walked over and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You know, sweetie, maybe we should have a special event to show everyone your artwork when it's finished." Ava looked up at him, a mix of excitement and nervousness in her eyes. "Really? You think people would want to see it?" "Of course they would," Alicia chimed in, joining them. "Your art speaks to people's hearts." On the other side of the yard, Sophia's excited voice rang out as she demonstrated her latest invention. A small car, covered in tiny solar panels, zipped across the concrete path she designated as her test track. Several neighborhood children who had wandered in watched in amazement. "The solar panels convert sunlight into electricity," Sophia explained, her voice confident as she pointed to different parts of the vehicle. "And these wheels are specially designed to—" "And now, ladies and gentlemen," Lila interrupted dramatically, jumping onto her stage. "Welcome to the Science Show with Professor Sophia, hosted by the amazing Lila." She grabbed an imaginary microphone and began interviewing her sister in an exaggerated news reporter voice. Rather than being annoyed, Sophia played along, demonstrating her invention with theatrical flair that had the watching children giggling and asking questions. The combination of science and comedy created an atmosphere of engaging learning that neither girl could have achieved alone. Meanwhile, Nina had carved out a special section of the garden, where she was teaching Tommy and Sarah from across the street about different types of plants. "These are called marigolds," she explained, gently touching the orange flowers. "They help protect the vegetable plants from bugs." Maya moved through the various groups, clipboard in hand, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She'd created a sign-up sheet for the neighborhood children who wanted to participate in different activities and was carefully managing the flow of visitors. "Remember to use the hand-washing station before touching any plants," she reminded a group of eager gardeners. "And art supplies need to be cleaned and returned to their proper places." Ben watched it all unfold from his workbench, where he'd been helping build some additional storage shelves. The Idea Factory had transformed into something far more meaningful than he'd initially imagined. It wasn't just a space for his family anymore. It had become a gathering place where creativity and community flourished together. Alicia joined him, wrapping an arm around his waist. "Look at them," she said softly, each one sharing their gifts in their own way. They watched as Ava gradually overcame her shyness to explain her mural design to interested neighbors, while Sophia and Lila's impromptu science show drew more spectators. Nina's garden group had grown larger, with parents now joining their children to learn about sustainable planting, all under Maya's careful orchestration. As Ben watched the children collaborating in the idea factory, something clicked in his mind. The way they naturally shared ideas, built upon each other's strengths, and created something greater than they could alone. It was beautiful. And more than that, it was exactly what his business had been missing. He rushed to his workbench and grabbed his notebook, his hand flying across the page as he wrote. Community-driven innovation, he muttered to himself. Real solutions for real people. Alicia noticed his intense focus and walked over. What's got you so excited? This, Ben said, gesturing to the bustling backyard. We've created something amazing here, but it's more than just a family project. It's a model for how innovation should work. The next morning, Ben called his remaining business associates to meet him at the Idea Factory. They arrived looking skeptical, but their expressions changed to curiosity as they took in the vibrant space. I know we're facing challenges, Ben began, standing before them. But what if our biggest mistake was trying to innovate in isolation? He pointed to Sophia's workstation, where her solar car sat proudly. My stepdaughter created that because she saw a need. Her sister Nina wanted a way to transport water to different parts of the garden. She collaborated with others, tested her ideas, and improved them based on real feedback. His associates listened intently as Ben outlined his vision. Instead of developing products in a vacuum, we partner with the community. We identify real needs, collaborate with local talent, and create solutions that actually matter to people. Sarah Chen, his head of development, spoke up. But how do we monetize that kind of model? Look around, Ben replied. This space has been running for weeks with minimal resources. What we've lacked in funding, we've made up for in creativity and community support. Imagine scaling that approach. To demonstrate his point, Ben organized a community showcase the following weekend. The Idea Factory was transformed into an exhibition space, with local business leaders and potential investors mingling with families and neighbors. Ava's mural served as a stunning backdrop as Sophia demonstrated her latest innovations. Lila kept the energy high with her natural hosting abilities, while Nina led tours of the thriving community garden. Maya efficiently managed the flow of visitors, impressing several business leaders with her organizational skills. One by one, community members stood up to share how the Idea Factory had impacted their lives. Mrs. Peterson spoke about how her grandson's interest in science had blossomed thanks to Sophia's workshops. Mr. Rodriguez, a local engineer, described how collaborating with the children had inspired him to develop simpler solutions at work. Throughout the presentations, Ben noticed several potential investors taking notes and nodding appreciatively. Patricia Wong, a prominent venture capitalist known for funding sustainable initiatives, approached him. This is fascinating, Ben, she said, watching as a group of children and adults worked together to solve a puzzle Sophia had designed. You're not just creating products, you're building an ecosystem of innovation. Alicia squeezed Ben's hand as they observed the scene before them. The Idea Factory buzzed with energy, as people from all walks of life shared ideas, solved problems together, and built connections. It was everything Ben had envisioned and more, a living proof of concept that innovation thrived best when it grew from community roots. The morning sun cast long shadows across the kitchen table where Alicia sat, staring at the official letter in her trembling hands. The city council's seal seemed to mock her as she read the words again, trying to make sense of the accusations. Ben noticed her distress immediately as he entered the kitchen. What's wrong? They're saying there are discrepancies in the financial reports from the Thompson Street renovation project, Alicia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been summoned to explain myself to the city council. Ben pulled up a chair beside her, his brow furrowed with concern. That's impossible. You're the most meticulous person I know. I handled everything by the book, Alicia insisted, spreading out her perfectly organized folders. Every receipt, every invoice, every transaction, it's all documented. We'll get to the bottom of this, Ben assured her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. The next morning brought chaos to their usually peaceful street. News vans lined the curb, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal trees. Reporters swarmed their front yard, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Mrs. Johnson, how do you respond to allegations of embezzlement? Did you misappropriate community funds? What about the missing $50,000? Alicia clutched her car keys tightly, trying to shepherd the quintuplets through the media circus to get them to school. The girls huddled close to her, overwhelmed by the commotion. Maya attempted to shield Ava, who was on the verge of tears. Inside their car, Alicia's hands shook as she turned on the radio, only to hear Richard Thompson's smooth voice filling the space. While I hate to say I told you so, this development hardly surprises me. The Calloway Johnson household has shown a pattern of questionable decision-making. The grocery store, once a place of friendly exchanges, became an arena of whispered judgments. Alicia could feel the stares burning into her back as she pushed her cart down the aisles. Two women she'd known for years quickly turned away when she approached, their shopping carts suddenly fascinating. "Mommy," Nina whispered, tugging at her sleeve, "why is everyone looking at us funny?" Alicia swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. "Sometimes people believe things that aren't true, sweetie." At home that evening, Maya's report from school added another layer of pain. Jessica's mom said she can't come over anymore, she announced at dinner, pushing her peas around her plate. "And some kids were saying mean things about you, Mom." The usually chatty dinner table fell silent. Lila didn't crack a single joke. Sophia barely touched her science magazine. Even the normally resilient Maya seemed deflated. Ben watched his family crumbling under the weight of suspicion and judgment. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Listen to me, all of you. Your mother is the most honest, hardworking person I know. We will clear her name. This family doesn't break, we get stronger." Alicia looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time since the letter arrived, she felt a spark of hope. But as she glanced at her daughter's worried faces, she wondered how much damage would be done before the truth came to light. Ben and Alicia sat across from Samuel Hayes in his modest office, surrounded by filing cabinets and the gentle hum of an old ceiling fan. The private investigator's weathered face remained neutral as he examined the stack of documents spread across his desk. "Everything's documented here," Alicia explained, pointing to her meticulously organized folders. "Every transaction, every receipt, every approval form, I kept detailed records of it all." Samuel Hayes nodded slowly, his experienced eyes scanning the papers. 25 years in this business tells me one thing. When money goes missing, there's always a trail." He picked up a financial statement, studying it carefully. "If someone's trying to frame you, Mrs. Johnson, they've left footprints somewhere." Ben leaned forward in his chair. "Cost isn't an issue, Mr. Hayes. We need to clear Alicia's name." "Call me Sam," the investigator replied, reaching for his notepad. "Tell me about Richard Thompson. What's his connection to all this?" As Ben explained the history with his former investor, Samuel's pen moved steadily across the page. The investigator's eyes narrowed at the mention of Thompson's recent media appearances. Over the next few days, Samuel delved deep into the financial records. He worked methodically, following the money trail through a maze of transactions. Each evening, he updated Ben and Alicia on his findings. "Look at this," Samuel said during one such meeting, spreading documents across their kitchen table after the girls had gone to bed. The missing funds were diverted through 3 different shell companies before disappearing. He pointed to several highlighted transactions. "And guess what these companies have in common?" Alicia studied the papers. "What?" "They all trace back to subsidiary corporations owned by Richard Thompson's investment group." Ben's fists clenched. "Can you prove it?" "We're getting there," Samuel assured them. "But there's more." The breakthrough came unexpectedly through Sophia. One afternoon, she burst through the front door, her backpack swinging wildly. "Mom! Dad! I heard something at school today." Ben and Alicia exchanged glances as Sophia caught her breath. "Jessica's dad works for Mr. Thompson," she explained. "She said she heard him on the phone yesterday bragging about teaching the Calloways a lesson. He was laughing about it." That evening, the family gathered around the dining room table. Ava had taken out her art supplies and began creating a detailed timeline on a large piece of paper. Her artistic skills brought clarity to the complex web of events, with arrows connecting key dates, transactions, and people. The timeline helps visualize everything, Samuel observed, studying Ava's work, and it confirms what I've uncovered. He pulled out a folder. I've traced the money. Thompson used his shell companies to redirect the funds, making it look like Alicia had embezzled them. He even planted false documentation to support the accusation. But why go to all this trouble? Alicia asked. To discredit both of you, Samuel explained. By ruining Alicia's reputation, he damages the community's trust in your family. This affects Ben's new business model, which relies heavily on community collaboration. It's a calculated move to destroy both your personal and professional lives. The legal team gathered in a sleek conference room, its polished oak table reflecting the morning light. Ben and Alicia sat side by side, their shoulders touching for mutual support, as their lawyer, Margaret Chen, reviewed Samuel Hayes' findings. The evidence is compelling, Margaret said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. The paper trail through Thompson's shell companies, the suspicious timing of transactions, the witness statements, it all builds a strong case. She paused, tapping her pen against the stack of documents. But Thompson has deep pockets and deeper connections. We need to proceed carefully. Samuel Hayes cleared his throat. I've documented every step of my investigation. The money trail is clear once you know where to look. Thompson got sloppy. He was too confident no one would dig deep enough. What's our next move? Ben asked, his hand finding Alicia's under the table. We prepare for both legal action and public response, Margaret explained. Thompson will likely try to discredit any evidence we present. We need to be ready. As they left the law office, Ben's phone buzzed with messages from several local reporters. Word had begun to spread about new developments in the case. That evening, the family gathered in their living room to discuss their options. We should tell our story, Lila suggested, bouncing on the edge of the couch. People need to hear the truth from us. Maya nodded enthusiastically. I can help organize everything. We could make a video explaining what happened. Ben and Alicia exchanged glances, then consulted with Margaret over the phone. With her cautious approval, they began crafting their message. The next morning, Maya coordinated with her sisters to film a simple but powerful video in their backyard, the very space that had inspired their family's renewal. In the video, Alicia spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Our community has always been built on trust and working together, she said. When that trust was broken, it hurt not just me but everyone who believed in our projects. Ben followed, explaining the connection to Thompson and the subsequent investigation. The video ended with a shot of the entire family in their idea factory, surrounded by the creative projects that had brought them closer together. The response was immediate. Within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. Community members began speaking out, sharing their own positive experiences with Alicia and the family's projects. A local coffee shop owner started a petition demanding a formal investigation into Thompson's activities. At a packed town hall meeting, longtime residents stood up one by one to defend Alicia's character. Sarah Martinez, who had worked with Alicia on previous community projects, spoke passionately about her friend's integrity. I've seen Alicia work tirelessly for this community for years, she declared. The accusation against her doesn't match the person we know. Thompson attempted to counter the growing support with a press release questioning the family's credibility, but his words rang hollow. Local news outlets began investigating his business practices more closely, and uncomfortable questions about his past dealings started to surface. The tide of public opinion was shifting, and Thompson's carefully constructed narrative began to crumble. Each day brought new supporters forward, and the family's idea factory became a symbol of resilience and community solidarity. The next day, the city council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as people filled every available seat. Fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the wood-paneled walls, and the air conditioning hummed steadily in the background. Ben and Alicia sat at a long table facing the council members, their shoulders straight despite the weight of the moment. Samuel Hayes arranged his documents methodically beside them, while their legal counsel reviewed last-minute notes. Richard Thompson strode in, wearing an expensive charcoal suit and his trademark smirk. He nodded to several council members as if they were old friends, then took his seat across the aisle from Ben and Alicia. The council chairperson, Mrs. Rodriguez, tapped her gavel. This special session will address the allegations against Alicia Johnson and examine new evidence pertaining to the community project funds. Her voice echoed through the microphone system. Mr. Hayes, you may proceed. Samuel Hayes approached the podium, his weathered face serious. Council members, what I'm about to present reveals a calculated scheme to destroy not only Alicia Johnson's reputation, but the trust of this entire community. He clicked a remote and the projection screen lit up with financial diagrams. These transactions, Hayes continued, pointing to highlighted sections, show funds being diverted through 3 shell companies: Riverside Holdings, Summit Enterprises, and Blue Valley Associates. He paused, letting the information sink in. All 3 companies trace back to one owner, Richard Thompson. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thompson's smirk faltered slightly. Hayes methodically presented bank statements, corporate filings, and email correspondence. With each piece of evidence, Thompson's composed facade cracked further. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as photographers captured his changing expression. When Hayes finished, Alicia rose slowly. Her voice trembled slightly but grew stronger as she spoke. For years, I've worked alongside many of you in this room. We've built playgrounds, started after-school programs, and created spaces where our community can thrive. These false accusations didn't just hurt me. They hurt every person who believed in our work. Ben stood beside her, his hand finding hers. This isn't about personal vendettas, he added. It's about truth and the values we want our community to represent. Thompson suddenly jumped to his feet. This is absurd. His voice cracked with desperation. They're clearly fabricating evidence to cover their own mismanagement. You can't possibly… Actually, they can, a new voice interrupted. A thin man in wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward from the back of the room. I'm Marcus Wells, Mr. Thompson's former accountant, and I can confirm everything Mr. Hayes has presented. The chamber erupted in gasps and exclamations. Thompson's face drained of color as Wells approached the podium, carrying his own stack of documents. I kept copies of all the original transactions, Wells explained. Mr. Thompson instructed me to move the funds through these shell companies, knowing they would eventually be traced back to Mrs. Johnson's project accounts. The council members huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. After several tense minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez addressed the room. In light of this evidence, we find Richard Thompson responsible for the fraudulent manipulation of community project funds and the deliberate defamation of Alicia Johnson's character. We are ordering an immediate criminal investigation. 2 police officers appeared at Thompson's side as he sputtered protests. Cameras flashed frantically as he was escorted from the chamber, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. The morning after Richard Thompson's arrest, newspapers across the city blazed with bold headlines. Local family triumphs, the truth behind the Johnson-Callaway scandal. Television stations interrupted their regular programming to broadcast breaking news updates about the case. Sandra Chen, a respected investigative journalist from the National Daily, sat across from Alicia in their living room. Sunlight streamed through the windows as cameras rolled. Mrs. Johnson, Sandra began warmly, how does it feel to have your name cleared? Alicia smoothed her skirt, her eyes bright with emotion. It feels like breathing again. The support from our community has been overwhelming. The interview aired nationwide that evening, showing clips of Alicia's years of community work interwoven with testimonials from people she'd helped. Alicia Johnson gave my kids a safe place to learn after school, one mother declared. She's always put others first, added a local teacher. The town square transformed into a vibrant celebration the following weekend. Colorful banners stretched between lampposts, and the air filled with the scent of grilled food and sweet treats. Children ran through the crowd wearing t-shirts that read, Johnson-Callaway Strong. Each of the quintuplets had their own space to shine. Ava set up an art gallery under a white tent, her paintings and sketches drawing admiring crowds. One piece, showing hands joined in unity, became the symbol of the day. Elderly visitors wiped away tears as they studied the young artist's work. At the science corner, Sophia enthusiastically demonstrated her experiments. Watch what happens when we combine these solutions, she exclaimed, delighting onlookers as colored smoke puffed from test tubes. Parents jotted down notes about her simple experiments to try at home with their children. Lila took to a small stage, her comedy routine drawing constant laughter. "You know what's funny?" she asked the crowd. "Some people thought they could break our family, but we're like super glue. We only get stronger when someone tries to pull us apart." The audience roared with appreciation. In the garden section, Nina taught children how to plant seedlings in small pots. "Every plant needs love and patience," she explained, helping tiny hands pat soil around delicate stems. Parents watched proudly as their children learned about nurturing new life. Maya stood on the main stage, her voice clear and confident. "When times got tough, we discovered our greatest strength was each other," she declared. "Our family proved that truth always wins." The crowd erupted in applause, many rising to their feet. Ben and Alicia moved through the festival hand in hand, stopping frequently to receive hugs and words of support. Community members shared stories of how the family had touched their lives, from Ben's business mentorship to Alicia's tireless volunteer work. As evening approached, the family gathered in their backyard around a crackling bonfire. Stars twinkled overhead as they roasted marshmallows on long sticks. The girls sat close to their parents, the warmth of the fire matching the glow in their hearts. Maya looked up at Ben and Alicia, her voice soft but strong. "You showed us what it means to fight for what's right," she said. "Even when everyone doubted us, you never gave up." Ben squeezed Alicia's hand, watching the firelight dance across the faces of their daughters. "It's your spirit that inspires us every day," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Each one of you brings something special to our family." Laughter filled the air as Lila accidentally set her marshmallow on fire. Nina suggested using the burnt sugar as fertilizer. Sophia explained the chemical reaction of caramelization, and Ava sketched the scene in her notebook. The morning after the community celebration, Ben Calloway's office buzzed with renewed energy. 3 potential investors sat around the conference table, their expressions thoughtful as they reviewed his presentation. Among them was Sarah Chen, a prominent social impact investor known for backing innovative community projects. "What strikes me most," Sarah said, leaning forward, "is how your recent challenges led to this remarkable transformation. You've created something truly unique here." Ben gestured to the photos of the Idea Factory displayed on the screen behind him. "Our family taught me that true innovation comes from bringing diverse perspectives together," he explained, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had weathered storms and emerged stronger. The investors exchanged impressed glances as Ben outlined his vision for community-driven business practices. By the end of the meeting, they had pledged substantial funding, more than replacing what Richard Thompson had withdrawn months earlier. Later that week, Ben gathered his family in the Idea Factory. Autumn sunlight filtered through the windows, highlighting the creative chaos of their shared space. "I want this business to reflect who we are as a family," he announced. "Each of you has something valuable to contribute." The quintuplet's eyes lit up with excitement. Ava, usually reserved, stepped forward first. "What if we had a space where employees could express themselves through art?" she suggested softly. "It could help with stress and creativity." Sophia jumped in, her words tumbling out rapidly. "And we could use solar panels and wind turbines to power the building. I've been researching sustainable energy solutions." She pulled out a notebook filled with detailed sketches. "Every office needs more laughs," Lila declared, striking a comedic pose. "I could teach people how to use humor to build better teams. No more boring meetings." Nina, who had been quietly tending to her garden, looked up. "We should have green spaces everywhere," she said. "Plants improve air quality and help people feel more connected to nature." Maya, already organizing her sister's ideas on a whiteboard, added, "I can help create programs to teach other kids about leadership and teamwork." Alicia watched proudly as Ben took notes on each suggestion. The business began implementing these ideas over the following weeks. The old warehouse transformed into a vibrant workspace that reflected the family's vision. Living walls filled with Nina's carefully selected plants bordered open collaboration areas. Ava's art studio became a sanctuary where employees could unleash their creativity during breaks. At the grand reopening, hundreds of community members toured the renovated building. They watched Sophia demonstrate the solar technology she had helped design and laughed at Lila's impromptu comedy workshop in the break room. Maya confidently led groups through the new Leadership Development Center, while Nina explained the benefits of their rooftop garden. Standing at the podium during the ceremony, Alicia surveyed the crowd. Business leaders who had once doubted them now sat in the front row, nodding appreciatively. "This company represents more than business success," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "It shows what happens when we embrace our differences and work together, when we lead with heart as well as mind." The audience applauded as Ben joined her on stage, followed by the quintuplets. They stood together, a living testament to the power of family, resilience, and innovation. Days after, dark clouds gathered over the Idea Factory as autumn winds swept through the neighborhood. What had begun as a season of triumph was slowly turning into something more ominous. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Ava discovered her latest mural, a piece celebrating community unity, covered in harsh black paint. "Mom! Dad!" she called out, her voice trembling. Ben and Alicia rushed to the backyard, where they found their usually quiet daughter fighting back tears. The defacement wasn't random. It appeared calculated, destroying specific elements of the artwork that represented family and togetherness. Over the next week, more incidents followed. Sophia's carefully calibrated solar panels mysteriously tilted away from the sun, rendering them ineffective. Her small robot prototypes, which she used to teach neighborhood children about science, vanished without a trace. The young inventor found her workstation in disarray, delicate equipment knocked over, and notes scattered. "This doesn't make sense," Sophia said, picking up pieces of her latest project. "I always secure everything before leaving." The family gathered in their living room to discuss the mounting problems. Maya, ever the organizer, stood at her whiteboard listing each incident chronologically. "These aren't accidents," she declared, circling patterns in the timeline. "Someone's targeting everything we've built." Lila, usually quick with a joke, sat unusually quiet. "Remember those men who always followed Richard Thompson around?" she asked. "The ones who glared at us during the city council meeting?" Alicia nodded slowly. "His associates were very loyal. Some of them lost investments when his schemes were exposed." Ben paced the room, his entrepreneur's mind racing to connect dots. "We need to be careful," he warned. "If they're behind this, they might escalate." That very night, Nina's encounter confirmed their fears. She had stayed late to check on some sensitive seedlings, using her small flashlight to navigate the garden. The beam caught something moving near the storage shed. A figure dressed in dark clothes, face obscured by shadows. "Hello?" Nina called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure froze for a moment, then quickly disappeared around the corner. By the time Nina alerted her family and they searched the property, only footprints in the soft soil remained. The local police officer, Officer Martinez, walked the perimeter with Ben and Alicia the next morning. "Without clear evidence of a crime or direct threats, our options are limited," he explained sympathetically, "but we'll increase patrols in the area." That afternoon, Ben discovered threatening messages had been posted on the Idea Factory's social media pages from anonymous accounts. Comments questioned the safety of their programs and hinted at secrets the family was hiding. Several parents called to cancel their children's participation in upcoming workshops. "They're trying to destroy everything we've rebuilt," Alicia said that evening, watching the quintuplets huddle together on the couch. The girls, usually bustling with energy and ideas, seemed subdued. Even Maya's leadership board, typically filled with exciting plans, now listed security measures and buddy systems. The family installed security cameras and better lighting around the property, but they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak in the night, every shadow at dusk, carried new weight. The Idea Factory, once a symbol of their triumph over adversity, had become a target in someone's carefully orchestrated revenge plot. Samuel Hayes arrived at the Idea Factory early one morning, his weathered face showing concern as he surveyed the damage from recent incidents. The private investigator had grown fond of the Calloway Johnson family during their previous collaboration, and seeing their creative space violated stirred something protective in him. "Show me everything," he said to Ben and Alicia, setting up his sophisticated surveillance equipment. The quintuplets gathered around, each eager to share their observations. "The incidents always happen between midnight and 4 a.m., Maya reported, showing her detailed timeline. "And they're getting bolder," Sophia added, demonstrating how her experimental solar panels had been deliberately misaligned. Samuel Hayes nodded, setting up tiny cameras in strategic locations. "We'll catch them," he assured the family. "These aren't professional tactics. They're personal, emotional. That tells us something." Over the next few days, Hayes meticulously reviewed footage, cross-referencing timestamps with Maya's documentation. Late one evening, he called the family together, his laptop screen showing a freeze frame of their nighttime visitor. "Meet Mark Stevens," Hayes announced, pulling up a photo alongside the surveillance image. "Former VP of Operations under Richard Thompson, lost his entire investment portfolio when Thompson went down." Alicia leaned closer to the screen. "I remember him from Thompson's office. He always seemed to handle the uncomfortable tasks." "He's been communicating with Thompson," Sophia interjected. She pulled out her tablet showing encrypted messages she'd discovered. "I noticed unusual data patterns in our network. Someone's been piggybacking on our Wi-Fi to send coded messages to the prison where Thompson's being held." Hayes looked impressed. "Good work, Sophia. This proves Thompson's still pulling strings from behind bars." Ben paced the room, his entrepreneur's mind already formulating a plan. "So we set a trap?" "Exactly," Hayes replied. "Make it too tempting for Stevens to resist." They spent the next hour planning their sting operation. Ava would leave her art supplies conspicuously accessible. Sophia would position her newest invention, a solar-powered robot, in clear view. Nina would prepare her garden for a special community event complete with expensive new equipment. The family made a show of leaving for what appeared to be an overnight trip, making sure Stevens would notice their departure. Police officers, coordinated by Hayes, positioned themselves discreetly around the property. Inside, Ben, Alicia, and the quintuplets waited in their designated hiding spots. Around 2 a.m., their patience paid off. Mark Stevens crept into the Idea Factory, heading straight for Sophia's robotics station. As he began dismantling the robot, bright lights flooded the space. "Freeze, police!" Officers emerged from their positions, weapons drawn. Stevens spun around, his face contorted with rage. "You don't understand," he shouted. "Thompson was right about them. They destroyed everything we built." "No, Mr. Stevens," Alicia stepped forward, her voice firm. "Your blind loyalty to a corrupt man destroyed what you built. We simply exposed the truth." As officers handcuffed Stevens, Hayes discovered a phone containing direct communications with Thompson. The evidence was irrefutable. Thompson had orchestrated the entire sabotage campaign from his prison cell. Maya watched the police car drive away with Stevens. "Will it finally be over now?" she asked, her usual confidence tinged with worry. "Yes," Hayes assured her, patting her shoulder. "With these new charges, Thompson won't be able to reach anyone from prison anymore. They'll make." The autumn sun cast a warm glow over the Idea Factory as community members gathered to help restore what Mark Stevens had tried to destroy. Paint cans clinked, hammers tapped, and cheerful chatter filled the air. Ava stood before her damaged mural, surrounded by fellow artists from the neighborhood who had volunteered their time. "We'll make it even better than before," said Mrs. Chen from the local art supply store, mixing colors to match Ava's original design. Sophia worked with a team of tech-savvy volunteers, installing state-of-the-art security cameras and sensors. Her face scrunched in concentration as she programmed the new system. "This will detect any unauthorized entry," she explained to Ben, who watched proudly as his daughter's innovation shone through. Nina and her garden club friends replanted damaged beds, their hands deep in rich soil. Lila kept spirits high, entertaining the volunteers with her jokes and stories. Maya coordinated everything with her clipboard, ensuring supplies reached the right places and everyone had water and snacks. Samuel Hayes observed the scene from the sidelines, touched by the community's response. "You've built something special here," he told Alicia. "These people aren't just helping because they feel obligated. They're here because they believe in what you've created." Local news crews arrived to document the restoration efforts. A reporter interviewed Ben as he helped install new workbenches. "What made you continue despite the setbacks?" she asked. Ben gestured to the bustling activity around them. "Look at this. People coming together, sharing their skills, supporting each other. That's what the Idea Factory has always been about. No saboteur could destroy that spirit." The media coverage sparked interest from neighboring towns. Phones rang with inquiries about starting similar programs. Maya presented her franchise proposal during a family meeting in their newly secured space. "We could help other communities create their own idea factories," she explained, showing detailed plans on her tablet. "Each one unique to their needs, but following our core principles of creativity, collaboration, and community." Alicia nodded thoughtfully. "And sharing our story could help others facing similar challenges." She pulled out a notebook filled with writing. "I've been documenting everything since we started. People need to know that good can triumph over negativity." Ben gathered his family close. "Every obstacle has made us stronger," he said. "The Idea Factory isn't just about innovation anymore. It's about resilience, unity, and never giving up on what you believe in." The quintuplets huddled around their parents, each adding their vision for the future. Ava suggested art therapy programs for troubled youth. Sophia proposed science workshops for underserved schools. Lila wanted to organize comedy nights to raise funds for local charities. Nina planned environmental education initiatives. Maya outlined leadership training for young entrepreneurs. Samuel Hayes watched the family brainstorm, reminded of why he'd become so invested in their success. The Idea Factory had evolved from a simple backyard project into a beacon of hope and possibility. As he prepared to leave, knowing his work was done, he saw volunteers still arriving with supplies and support, proving that the community spirit remained unbreakable. Years later, the Idea Factory buzzed with anticipation as Maya stood at the podium, her presentation materials neatly arranged before her. At 19 years old, she carried herself with a confidence that made Ben's chest swell with pride. The room was packed with community leaders, business owners, and potential partners from neighboring towns. "Our success here wasn't just about the programs or the space," Maya explained, clicking through her carefully prepared slides. "It was about creating a place where everyone feels valued and inspired." Her voice carried clearly across the room, steady despite her nerves. Questions came from all directions. A silver-haired woman in a business suit raised her hand. "How can you ensure each location maintains the same warmth and community spirit?" Maya glanced at Ben before responding. "By making sure local leaders understand our core values. Every Idea Factory will be unique to its community, but they'll all share the same heart." While the expansion plans moved forward at the Idea Factory, challenges surfaced at home. In her art studio, Ava sat cross-legged before an empty canvas, her usual creative flow nowhere to be found. Scattered around her were crumpled sketches and abandoned projects. The mural commissions that once excited her now felt overwhelming. Down the hall, Sophia's frustrated growl echoed from her workshop. Her latest renewable energy prototype had failed for the third time that week. Parts lay scattered across her workbench, a testament to hours of effort with nothing to show for it. "Why won't you just work?" she muttered, pushing her safety goggles up onto her forehead. In the backyard, Lila practiced her routine for the upcoming school talent show. Her usual confidence wavered as she remembered the whispers she'd heard in the cafeteria. "Her jokes are so lame," someone had said, not realizing she could hear. The words stuck with her, making each practice session feel heavier than the last. Nina sat at her computer, scrolling through environmental news that made her heart sink. Reports of deforestation and climate change seemed endless. Her garden, once a source of pure joy, now reminded her of all the global problems she couldn't solve. Meanwhile, Maya felt the pressure of everyone's expectations. Leading the expansion project and helping coordinate existing programs left her exhausted. She'd started having trouble sleeping, her mind racing with all the responsibilities. Alicia noticed the changes in her daughters. The usual laughter and energy that filled their home had dimmed. That evening, she called for a family dinner. No phones, no distractions, just them. As they passed dishes around the table, Ben looked at each of their faces. "I've noticed things have been different lately," he said gently. "Maybe it's time we talk about what's really going on." The silence hung heavy for a moment before Ava spoke up. "I can't paint anymore," she admitted quietly. "Every time I try, it feels wrong." One by one, the girls shared their struggles. Sophia described her failed experiments. Lila confessed her insecurities about her comedy. Nina expressed her environmental anxieties, and Maya finally acknowledged feeling overwhelmed by the expansion project. "It's okay to feel uncertain," Ben assured them, his voice warm and steady. "Success isn't about never failing or never doubting. It's about how we handle those moments." Alicia reached out and squeezed Maya's hand. "Maybe we need to slow down the expansion plans. There's no rush. What matters most is that we're all okay." The weeks following the family dinner brought new energy to the Idea Factory and the Callaway Johnson household. Alicia, determined to help her daughters rediscover their passions, reached out to her extensive network of community connections to find suitable mentors for each of the girls. For Ava, the introduction to Emily Davis proved transformative. The celebrated artist, known for her bold, abstract pieces, invited Ava to her sunlit studio downtown. Emily's workspace was a riot of color and texture, with canvases in various stages of completion leaning against every wall. "Art isn't about perfection," Emily explained, watching Ava tentatively approach a blank canvas. "It's about expressing what's inside you, even if it's messy or unclear." Under Emily's guidance, Ava began experimenting with new techniques, finding freedom in abandoning her usual precise style. Sophia found her stride in Dr. Marcus Lee's robotics lab at the local university. The distinguished professor's eyes lit up when he saw her prototype designs. "These are impressive," he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "How would you like to join our youth robotics team?" Sophia's face brightened for the first time in weeks. The community theater welcomed Lila with open arms. The director, charmed by her natural wit, immediately cast her in their upcoming production. During rehearsals, Lila's confidence grew as she discovered the joy of making people laugh on her own terms. Nina found purpose working with the Environmental Action Network, where she learned to channel her anxiety into meaningful projects. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by global issues, she focused on local initiatives that made tangible differences. Maya attended leadership workshops that helped her balance ambition with self-care. She learned valuable skills about delegation and project management that eased her burden of responsibility. The Idea Factory's Inspire Fest became the perfect showcase for their renewed enthusiasm. The building hummed with activity as children and parents filled every available space. In the art room, Ava guided young artists through an abstract painting exercise, her own excitement evident as she encouraged their creativity. Down the hall, Sophia's robotics demonstration drew gasps of wonder from wide-eyed children as small robots navigated obstacle courses. Her previous failed attempts forgotten, she confidently explained the basic principles of programming to her eager audience. On the small stage in the courtyard, Lila's comedy performance had both children and adults doubled over with laughter. Her jokes, now delivered with renewed confidence, connected with the audience in a way that validated her unique style of humor. In the community garden, Nina led groups of children in planting seedlings, teaching them about sustainability with infectious enthusiasm. Her knowledge and passion inspired many families to start their own garden projects at home. Maya moved through the event with practiced ease, ensuring everything ran smoothly while delivering her leadership workshop to aspiring young entrepreneurs. Her presentation stressed the importance of maintaining values while pursuing success. The event's success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Corporate representatives approached Ben during the closing ceremonies, their sleek business cards and polished pitches promising nationwide expansion opportunities. They spoke of franchising models, merchandising possibilities, and corporate sponsorships that could provide substantial resources. "Think of how many more children we could reach," one executive said, gesturing to the happy faces around them. "With our backing, you could have an Idea Factory in every major city." The offers were tempting, but Ben noticed how they emphasized profit margins over community impact. Alicia observed the way the representatives dismissed the importance of keeping programs affordable for all families. The couple exchanged concerned glances, recognizing that these proposals could fundamentally change what made the Idea Factory special. In a downtown high-rise, Ben Calloway and Maya Johnson sat across from three corporate executives in tailored suits. The conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of the city, but their attention was fixed on the presentation before them. "Our market research suggests we could open 50 Idea Factories within the first year," explained Sarah Chen, the lead executive. She clicked through slides showing impressive projections and growth charts. "With our resources and your vision, we're looking at reaching over 1 million children annually." Maya's eyes sparkled as she took notes, her mind racing with possibilities. The numbers were compelling. State-of-the-art equipment, professional staffing, marketing budgets that dwarfed their current operations. Ben, however, maintained a neutral expression, studying the fine print on each slide. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for the licensing rights," another executive added, sliding a document across the polished table. The figure made Maya gasp softly. That evening, the family gathered in their living room for what became an increasingly tense discussion. Maya stood near the fireplace, gesturing animatedly as she presented the proposal to her sisters. "Just think about it. We could help kids everywhere, not just in our town," she insisted. "The resources they're offering could revolutionize what we do." Ava, curled up in an armchair with her sketchbook, shook her head. "But they'll want to standardize everything. Art isn't meant to be mass-produced like that." "They mentioned replacing our current programs with proven curriculum modules," Sophia added, making air quotes. "That sounds like they want to turn the Idea Factory into just another chain of learning centers." Lila, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up from her spot on the couch. "Our whole thing is being genuine and personal. How can we be authentic if we're following some corporate handbook?" "And their environmental impact report is concerning," Nina interjected, holding up her tablet. "Their proposed construction methods and materials don't align with sustainable practices at all." Maya's frustration mounted. "You're all being short-sighted. We have a chance to make a real difference here, to reach people we never could on our own." "At what cost?" Alicia asked gently, noting the rising tension. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one thinking big picture," Maya shot back, her voice cracking slightly. "Everyone else seems content staying small and safe." Ben raised his hands, calling for quiet as the sisters began talking over each other. "Let's take a breath," he suggested. "This decision affects more than just us. Why don't we ask the people who matter most, our community?" "A town hall meeting," Alicia nodded, warming to the idea. "We can hear from the families who use the Idea Factory, get their perspective." The suggestion seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. Even Maya's shoulders relaxed slightly, though she still clutched her notebook of proposals tightly. "We could host it next week," Ben continued. "Give everyone time to consider the implications carefully. This isn't a decision we should rush." The family agreed, though the atmosphere remained charged with unresolved emotions. Maya excused herself to her room, while her sisters broke into smaller groups, discussing their concerns in hushed voices. Ben and Alicia exchanged worried glances, knowing this decision could either unite or divide their family. The community center's main hall buzzed with anticipation as residents filed in, filling every available seat. Extra chairs lined the walls, and still, people stood at the back, shoulder to shoulder. The familiar faces of children who had grown up attending Idea Factory programs mixed with concerned parents and local business owners. Ben Calloway stood at the podium, his hands resting lightly on its edges. The overhead lights caught the silver threading through his hair, evidence of the years he'd dedicated to building this dream. Alicia sat in the front row with the quintuplets, each girl displaying varying degrees of nervousness. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Ben began, his voice carrying clearly through the packed room. "We're here to discuss something that affects not just our family but our entire community. We've received an offer from Corporate Innovations Group to expand the Idea Factory nationally." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Ben outlined the proposal, including the promised resources, potential reach, and financial benefits. He then detailed the required changes: standardized programming, fee structures, and corporate oversight. Before we make any decision, he concluded, we want to hear from you, the people who have made the Idea Factory what it is today. Sarah Martinez, who owned the local bookstore, was the first to stand. I've watched countless kids discover their passions in your programs. But I've also seen what happens when big companies take over small businesses. They promise the world but often forget about the heart of what makes something special. James Chen, whose son had attended the first Idea Factory workshops, spoke next. My Tommy couldn't afford fancy summer camps or private tutoring, but here he found mentors who believed in him. Now he's studying engineering in college. If you start charging fees like these corporations want, how many future engineers might we lose? A teenage girl named Rachel stood, her voice trembling slightly. The Idea Factory taught me it's okay to be different, to think differently. Corporate programs all feel the same, like you're just another number in their system. One by one, community members shared their stories. Some spoke of friendships formed, others of dreams sparked. A few supported expansion but worried about losing the personal touch that made the Idea Factory unique. The quintuplets listened intently. When it was their turn, each girl approached the podium. Ava spoke softly about the freedom to create without restrictions. Sophia described the joy of experimenting without worrying about success metrics. Lila shared how laughter and learning went hand in hand in their programs. Nina emphasized the importance of maintaining their environmental values. Finally, Maya stood, her earlier certainty wavering as she faced the crowd. I was wrong, she admitted, her voice clear despite her emotion. I got caught up in the numbers, how many people we could reach, how big we could grow. But listening to everyone tonight, I realize what makes the Idea Factory special isn't its size. It's the connections we build, the dreams we nurture, and the community we create together. Ben returned to the podium, Alicia joining him. Together, they unveiled an alternative proposal, a network of independent Idea Factories, each rooted in its local community but connected through shared resources and knowledge. We can grow, Ben explained, but we'll grow like a garden, from the ground up, nurturing each unique space while staying true to our core values. The tension in the room dissolved into applause. Community members stood, offering support and suggestions for the new direction. The quintuplets hugged each other, their earlier disagreements forgotten in the face of this unified vision. The regional conference center bustled with energy as representatives from dozens of communities filled the main hall. Banners displaying "Building Communities Through Innovation" hung from the ceiling, and information packets about the Idea Factory model lined the registration tables. Ben Calloway stood at the center stage with Alicia Johnson and the quintuplets beside him. The audience listened intently as he shared their journey, from the backyard transformation to the creation of their unique community space. Today, he announced, our family will guide you through the essential elements that make the Idea Factory work. But remember, each community should adapt these principles to reflect their own unique character. The quintuplets split off to lead their specialized workshops. In the East Wing, Ava Johnson captivated her audience with slides of transformed urban spaces. Her voice, though soft, carried conviction as she explained how public art could unite communities. It's not just about beautification, she explained, showing before and after photos of their original mural wall. It's about giving people a sense of ownership and pride in their shared spaces. Sophia Johnson's workshop buzzed with activity as participants assembled simple robots from recycled materials. Innovation doesn't require expensive equipment, she demonstrated, helping a participant adjust a motor. It's about fostering curiosity and providing opportunities to explore. In the performance hall, laughter echoed as Lila Johnson led exercises in improvisational theater. When people learn to laugh together, she shared, they build trust and overcome fears. Her workshop participants, initially hesitant, now enthusiastically participated in team-building activities. Nina Johnson transformed the outdoor courtyard into an educational space, teaching attendees about sustainable gardening practices. Every community can benefit from green spaces, she explained, showing how to start small and grow gradually. Her passion for environmental stewardship shone through as she answered questions about composting and water conservation. Maya Johnson commanded attention in the strategy room, where she outlined organizational structures and leadership principles. Success comes from empowering others, she emphasized, sharing their system of rotating responsibilities and inclusive decision-making. Back home, the family's individual achievements began to multiply. Ava Johnson stood quietly proud at the State Art Gallery, where her series Community Connections drew admirers from across the region. Her subtle use of color and meaning captured the essence of human bonds. Sophia Johnson's robotics project, designed to assist elderly community members with daily tasks, earned top honors at the National Youth Innovation Awards. Her acceptance speech acknowledged the Idea Factory's role in nurturing her scientific curiosity. The local theater's production of Our Town featured Lila Johnson in a leading role, her natural comedic timing bringing fresh energy to the classic play. During curtain calls, she spotted her family in the front row, beaming with pride. Nina Johnson's grant proposal for expanding community gardens into local schools succeeded, securing funding for 10 new locations. Her detailed plans emphasized education and sustainability, reflecting years of hands-on experience. At the Regional Youth Leadership Summit, Maya Johnson delivered a keynote address about empowering young voices in community development. Her confident presence and practical insights earned a standing ovation. The family gathered in their backyard, the original Idea Factory, for a celebration with close friends and community members. Fairy lights twinkled overhead as people shared stories and laughter. Ben Calloway raised his glass, looking at his family with pride. "To growth that doesn't compromise who we are," he toasted. Alicia Johnson stood beside him, adding her own toast. "And to the incredible future ahead." The quintuplets joined together in a group hug, their unique bonds stronger than ever, strengthened by their shared journey and individual growth. The years had transformed the Johnson quintuplets into accomplished young women, each carving her unique path while staying true to their shared values. At 16, their individual talents had blossomed far beyond their childhood beginnings in the Idea Factory. Ava Johnson stood atop a cherry picker, her brush moving with confident strokes across the town's water tower. Below, dozens of community members watched in awe as she brought to life a stunning mural depicting hands of different ages and colors joining together. The piece, commissioned by the City Council, would become her most visible work yet, visible from miles around. In the science wing of Central High School, Sophia Johnson presented her latest invention, a compact solar energy converter that could power an entire classroom. "The best part," she explained to the school board, "is that it's cost-effective and can be assembled by students themselves." Her device had already been implemented in 3 local schools, with more requesting installations every week. The community center's auditorium erupted in laughter as Lila Johnson commanded the stage during her monthly comedy fundraiser. Her witty observations about family life and community dynamics resonated with the diverse audience. The proceeds from her shows had already funded new playground equipment for the local park and scholarships for underprivileged students. Nina Johnson's voice carried across the Regional Environmental Summit as she presented data from her successful initiative to reduce the town's carbon footprint. "By implementing simple changes in our daily routines," she explained to representatives from neighboring cities, "we've decreased our community's emissions by 30% in just 2 years." In the renovated downtown business district, Maya Johnson cut the ribbon at the grand opening of her Youth Entrepreneurship Center. "Every young person deserves the chance to turn their dreams into reality," she declared, surrounded by the first cohort of aspiring business owners. The town square buzzed with excitement during the celebration honoring the quintuplets' achievements. Banners bearing their names fluttered in the breeze as the mayor approached the podium. "The Calloway quintuplets," he announced, "have shown us what's possible when young people are given the support and freedom to pursue their passions. Their impact has transformed our community and inspired us all." Ben Calloway and Alicia Johnson sat in the front row, their eyes glistening with pride as each daughter received her award. The crowd's standing ovation seemed to last forever, a testament to the deep impact the girls had made on their community. After the ceremony, Ben Calloway's parents approached him hesitantly. His father's usual stern expression had softened. "Son," he began, his voice thick with emotion, We were wrong about your choices. You've built something extraordinary here." His mother nodded in agreement, reaching out to squeeze Alicia Johnson's hand. Several of Ben Calloway's former business associates, who had once questioned his decision to prioritize family over profit, now stood before him seeking guidance. "We've been watching how you've balanced success with social responsibility," one admitted. "We'd like to learn from your example." Parents who had once whispered disapprovingly about their unconventional family now approached Alicia Johnson for advice. "How did you nurture their individual talents while keeping them grounded?" they asked. Alicia Johnson shared knowing looks with Ben Calloway, remembering the challenging early days. Ben Calloway addressed the gathered crowd with characteristic grace. "It's never too late to support one another," he said, his arm around Alicia Johnson. "Our family's journey has taught us that every person has unique gifts to share when given the chance to shine." The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Calloway Johnson household as the family gathered for their usual breakfast routine. Lila Johnson was in the middle of one of her signature jokes when the doorbell rang, interrupting the comfortable family banter. A courier in a crisp uniform stood at the door, holding an elegant envelope emblazoned with a distinctive global emblem. "Special delivery for the Calloway quintuplets," he announced formally. Maya Johnson, always the natural leader, took the envelope and carefully opened it at the breakfast table, surrounded by her expectant family. Her eyes widened as she began to read aloud. "On behalf of the Global Youth Summit, we cordially invite the Calloway quintuplets to present their groundbreaking community work at this year's international conference." The kitchen erupted in excited chatter. Sophia Johnson immediately began calculating the logistics of transporting her prototype, while Ava Johnson wondered aloud about the lighting conditions for her art exhibition. Nina Johnson pulled out her tablet, already researching the summit's environmental initiatives from previous years. In the Idea Factory, preparation consumed their days. Each corner buzzed with activity as the quintuplets refined their presentations. Ava Johnson stood before a collection of her most impactful pieces, carefully selecting works that best represented her message of unity through art. Her latest mural photographs were laid out before her, each telling a story of community transformation. Sophia Johnson worked late into the nights, fine-tuning her sustainable technology prototype. The device, now smaller and more efficient than ever, hummed quietly as she ran final tests. "This could help schools worldwide," she muttered, making minute adjustments to the solar panels. Lila Johnson paced the small stage area, rehearsing her routine that balanced humor with powerful messages about youth empowerment. Her notebook was filled with carefully crafted jokes that transcended cultural boundaries while maintaining her signature warmth. Nina Johnson surrounded herself with charts and graphs, compiling years of environmental data into compelling visualizations. Her successful local initiatives had produced remarkable results, and she was determined to show how other communities could achieve similar outcomes. Maya Johnson sat at her desk, drafting and redrafting her keynote speech. Her words needed to capture not just their individual achievements, but the essence of what made their family's approach so unique and effective. The excitement dimmed slightly when Alicia Johnson received an email from Dr. Eleanor Williams, the summit director. "Some delegates have expressed concerns about the age and experience of our presenters," she read aloud to the family. "They question whether teenagers from a small town can offer meaningful insights on global issues." Ben Calloway watched his daughter's faces fall, but before he could speak, Alicia Johnson stood up. "Let your work speak for itself," she said firmly. "You've transformed our community through your dedication and talent. The results are undeniable." On the morning of their departure, the town square filled with supporters. Banners waved in the breeze as community members gathered to wish them well. Even those who had once doubted the family's unconventional approach now stood proudly among the well-wishers. Ben Calloway's parents approached with wrapped packages. "For each of you," his mother said softly, presenting each girl with a beautifully bound journal, "to record your thoughts during this amazing journey." As they boarded the bus that would take them to the airport, Ben Calloway paused on the steps. Looking back at the crowd of supporters, he felt the weight of the moment. He turned to Alicia Johnson, who stood beside him. "This is our chance to show the world what unity can achieve," he said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. The Grand Convention Center loomed before the Callaway Johnson family, its glass walls reflecting the morning sun. Inside, flags from dozens of nations hung from the ceiling, and hundreds of voices speaking different languages created an exciting buzz throughout the massive space. Maya Johnson gripped her presentation folder tighter as they made their way through the crowded lobby. Around them, delegates in suits and formal attire moved purposefully between conference rooms. The quintuplets had never felt more aware of their small-town origins than in this moment. Dr. Eleanor Williams, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, approached them with outstretched hands. "Welcome to the Global Youth Summit," she said warmly. "Your reputation precedes you. I've heard wonderful things about your work in community transformation." While Dr. Williams spoke with Ben and Alicia, the girls noticed the sideways glances and whispered conversations happening around them. A group of international delegates huddled near a coffee station, their eyes darting toward the family before quickly looking away. Victor Martinez, whose face they recognized from entrepreneurship magazines, sauntered over to where Maya stood. His perfectly tailored suit and confident smirk exuded success. "Maya Johnson, right?" he said, extending a manicured hand. "Impressive for small-town folks to make it here, though I suppose everyone needs an inspiring underdog story." During the technical rehearsal, an harried-looking organizer approached them with an apologetic expression. "I'm terribly sorry, but we've had to adjust the schedule. Your presentation slot has been reduced by 30 minutes due to overbooking." "But we have so much to share," Sophia protested, clutching her prototype. "The technical demonstration alone needs 15 minutes. The organizer shrugged helplessly. "I'm sorry, but the decision is final. There are many prestigious speakers who need time as well." Later that afternoon, Ava discovered that her art pieces, shipped carefully ahead of time, had been misplaced somewhere between receiving and the exhibition hall. As she frantically searched through storage areas with a venue staff member, Lila passed by a conference room where Victor Martinez was holding court with a group of admirers. "It's sweet, really," his voice carried through the partially open door. "A whole family doing their little community project, but this is a global summit, not a school science fair. Some of us are here to discuss serious solutions." Laughter followed his words, making Lila's cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. That evening, the family gathered in their hotel suite, the excitement of the morning replaced by uncertainty. Ben Callaway looked at each of his daughter's faces, seeing the doubt that had crept in during the day. "We've faced adversity before," he reminded them gently. "This is just another challenge. Remember when we first started the Idea Factory? Nobody believed in us then either." Maya pulled out a notebook and began sketching a timeline. "If we integrate our presentations instead of doing them separately, we could make the shortened time work," she suggested, her leadership instincts kicking in. "We could weave everything into one story," Nina added, warming to the idea. "Show how our individual projects connect to create real change." Alicia Johnson, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Remember, authenticity is our strength. They may have more experience or fancier presentations, but nobody else has our story. The story of how a family's love transformed an entire community." The grand auditorium buzzed with anticipation as hundreds of international delegates filled their seats. On stage, 5 podiums stood in a gentle arc, each decorated with sustainable materials that Nina had carefully selected. Behind them, a massive screen waited to showcase their unified presentation. Backstage, the quintuplets huddled together, their matching outfits reflecting their individual styles while maintaining a cohesive look. Ben and Alicia watched from the wings, their hearts swelling with pride. Maya stepped forward first, her voice clear and confident as it carried across the hall. "We are the Callaway quintuplets, and this is our story." The screen behind her illuminated with images of their small town. But more than that, this is a story about how unity can transform communities. Ava took her position next, and the screen shifted to display her artwork, a series of murals that had transformed their town's blank walls into vibrant messages of hope. "Art speaks a universal language," she explained, her usual shyness forgotten in the moment. "It bridges divides and helps us see the humanity in each other." Sophia followed, carrying her prototype. With practiced precision, She demonstrated how her sustainable energy device could power a small village using minimal resources. The model village on stage lit up section by section, drawing gasps of appreciation from the audience. Lila stepped up to her podium, her natural charisma shining through. "You know what they say about changing the world?" she asked, pausing for effect. "It takes a village, or in our case, 5 sisters and 2 amazing parents." The audience laughed warmly, their earlier skepticism melting away. Nina presented next, her environmental data flowing seamlessly into compelling visuals. "Our actions ripple outward," she explained, showing how their local initiatives had inspired neighboring communities to adopt similar programs. Maya brought their presentation to its peak, her voice passionate as she delivered their call to action. "Change doesn't require massive corporations or unlimited resources," she declared. "It requires heart, unity, and the courage to believe in something bigger than yourself." The audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the auditorium. Dr. Eleanor Williams wiped tears from her eyes as she joined the standing ovation. As they exited the stage, Victor Martinez blocked their path, his expression tight with frustration. "Cute performance," he said dismissively, "but feel-good stories don't change the world. Real change requires serious business solutions." Before any of the quintuplets could respond, Dr. Williams stepped forward. "On the contrary, Mr. Martinez," she said firmly, "what we've witnessed today is exactly what this summit needs." She turned to address the family. "Your presentation was the highlight of the summit. In fact, the board has unanimously decided to present you with our Global Youth Impact Award." Victor's face reddened as he backed away, his attempted undermining completely unsuccessful. The quintuplets gathered together in a group hug, their earlier doubts forgotten in the triumph of the moment. Ben and Alicia joined them, creating a circle of love and support that had become their signature. In the days following the Global Youth Summit, the Calloway family's presentation went viral across social media platforms. Major news networks picked up their story, fascinated by the unique blend of family unity and social impact. The quintuplets found themselves featured in prestigious magazines, their faces gracing covers that highlighted youth innovation and community transformation. CNN ran a special segment titled "The Calloway Effect: How 5 Sisters Changed Their World." The BBC featured their story in a documentary about youth-led social movements. Even skeptical business publications praised their sustainable approach to community development. Emails flooded their inbox. The United Nations Youth Council requested their participation in upcoming initiatives. Art therapy programs in Europe wanted to implement Ava's methods. Environmental organizations sought Nina's expertise in creating youth-led conservation projects. Tech companies expressed interest in developing Sophia's sustainable energy solutions. Theater groups worldwide reached out to collaborate with Lila on using comedy for social change. Leadership institutes clamored for Maya's insights on youth empowerment. Ben and Alicia worked tirelessly to manage the growing attention while ensuring their children remained grounded. "Remember," Alicia often said during family meetings, "our strength comes from staying true to who we are." One morning, as Ben sorted through their correspondence, he found a letter with a prison postmark. His hands trembled slightly as he recognized Richard Thompson's neat handwriting. The family gathered in their living room as he read the letter aloud. "Dear Calloway family, I write this letter with profound regret for my past actions. From my cell, I've watched your story unfold through news coverage and letters from my daughter. Your family's resilience and commitment to positive change has deeply affected me. I see now that my pursuit of power and wealth blinded me to what truly matters. Your recent presentation at the Global Youth Summit moved me to tears. The way you've transformed setbacks into opportunities for growth has shown me a better path. I have resources, acquired legally through family inheritance, that could support your initiatives. I seek no recognition or involvement beyond providing these resources for your work. I ask for forgiveness not to ease my conscience, but because I truly understand the damage I caused and wish to contribute to the good you're creating in the world. Sincerely, Richard Thompson." The room fell silent. Maya was the first to speak, her voice thoughtful. "We've always taught others about transformation and second chances." Alicia nodded slowly. "It's easy to forgive when there's nothing at stake. Real forgiveness happens when it's difficult. After careful consideration, the family agreed to arrange a video call with Richard Thompson. The call was scheduled for the following week, with proper clearance from prison authorities. When Richard's face appeared on the screen, they saw a changed man, humbled, sincere, and visibly moved by their willingness to listen. "I don't deserve your kindness," he began, his voice shaking, "but I want to help create the kind of world your family envisions." Maya, speaking for her sisters, responded with grace. "Our mission has always been about transformation and kindness. If you're sincere, we accept your help." The global expansion of the Idea Factories moved forward with remarkable momentum. With resources from Richard Thompson and support from international partners, the Callaway family's vision began taking root in communities worldwide. Each new location adapted the core model while maintaining its essential spirit of creativity, community engagement, and compassionate leadership. In Mumbai, a converted warehouse became a hub for technological innovation and traditional arts. In Lagos, an abandoned school transformed into a center for environmental education and entrepreneurship. In Santiago, a community center evolved into a space where young leaders developed solutions for local challenges. The quintuplets took active roles in mentoring these emerging centers. Ava conducted virtual art therapy sessions with groups in Asia, while Sophia helped implement sustainable technology solutions in African communities. Lila developed online comedy workshops for European youth, Nina coordinated environmental initiatives across South America, and Maya facilitated leadership training for emerging directors of new idea factories. Ben and Alicia watched with pride as their daughters navigated these responsibilities with grace and wisdom beyond their years. "They've grown into exactly who they were meant to be," Alicia remarked one evening, watching Maya lead a video conference with global partners. Richard Thompson's transformation became a powerful testament to the family's message of hope and redemption. Speaking from prison through video conferences, he shared his story with business leaders and philanthropists. "I once tried to destroy what I didn't understand," he would say. "Now I understand that supporting positive change is the greatest investment one can make." His advocacy opened doors that had previously been closed to the Idea Factory initiative. Corporate leaders who had once dismissed the project as naive now offered partnerships and resources. Even his former business associates began contributing to the cause, impressed by the tangible impact of the programs. The quintuplets' vision for a global summit took shape as reports of success poured in from idea factories worldwide. They planned an event that would unite all their initiatives under one roof, a celebration of creativity, innovation, and community spirit. The summit would feature art installations from Ava's global network, demonstrations of Sophia's sustainable technology implementations, performances coordinated by Lila's comedy outreach program, presentations from Nina's environmental projects, and leadership workshops developed by Maya. Ben found himself moved to tears one morning as he reviewed the summit proposals. "Look at this," he said to Alicia, showing her photos from idea factories across continents. "Remember when we thought we were just building something for our community?" Alicia smiled, watching their daughters coordinate with teams across time zones. "We were," she replied. "We just didn't realize how big our community would become." The family worked tirelessly to organize the summit, determined to create an event that would inspire even greater change. They chose a venue that could accommodate thousands of participants from every Idea Factory location. The quintuplets spent hours coordinating with global teams, ensuring that every voice would be heard and every achievement celebrated. The Grand Convention Center hummed with anticipation as thousands gathered for the Global Unity Summit. Delegates from every continent filled the vast halls, their diverse languages creating a symphony of excitement. Banners displaying "Ideas Unite Us" hung from the ceiling in multiple languages. Ava Johnson stood before an enormous blank canvas that stretched across the main hall. "Today, we create together," she announced, inviting participants to add their artistic contributions. Within hours, the mural transformed into a vibrant tapestry of global unity, each brushstroke telling a story of hope. In the Technology Pavilion, Sophia Johnson unveiled her latest innovation. This solar-powered water purification system can serve entire communities at a fraction of the current cost, she explained. demonstrating the device to amazed onlookers. Representatives from developing nations immediately began discussing implementation plans. Laughter echoed through the entertainment hall as Lila Johnson hosted her multilingual comedy showcase. She had worked with translators to ensure her message of joy reached everyone, proving that humor truly was a universal language. Outside in the courtyard, Nina Johnson led hundreds in a synchronized tree planting ceremony. "Each seed we plant today connects us to future generations," she declared, as participants from different countries shared their environmental preservation stories. Maya Johnson commanded attention on the main stage, moderating a panel of young leaders from various idea factories. Their discussion of global initiatives and future policies sparked intense interest from international policymakers in the audience. As evening approached, the family gathered on stage. Ben Calloway stepped forward, his voice filled with emotion. "Years ago, we believed that love and unity could change the world. Standing here today, we see that it has." Alicia Johnson joined him, adding, "Our journey wasn't easy, but every challenge strengthened our bond and our resolve." Each of the quintuplets shared personal stories. Ava spoke of art bridging cultural divides. Sophia described technological breakthroughs born from collaboration. Lila recalled moments when laughter healed wounds. Nina shared stories of communities uniting to protect the environment, and Maya highlighted the emergence of young leaders worldwide. The summit reached its pinnacle as a massive holographic display illuminated the sky. Messages from children and communities across the globe appeared. "Thank you, Calloway family, for igniting a global movement of hope." Tears streamed down the family's faces as they witnessed the scope of their impact. The hall fell silent as a group of international dignitaries approached the stage. Their spokesperson stepped forward with a proclamation. Henceforth, an annual global holiday called Unity Day would commemorate the Calloway family's contributions to humanity. The announcement was met with thunderous applause, echoing through the convention center as thousands rose to their feet in celebration. If you enjoyed the story of Ben, Alicia, and the 5 Johnson sisters, I handpicked this next story that will touch your heart. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.